What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm trying out this thing where I got this like little tripod to put my, obviously I don't have a camera, put my phone on, and it comes with this little nifty, what are you doing? It comes with this little nifty thing, like clicker, where I can click it and start the video. So I don't even have to like reach up and come back down and whatnot. So, yeah, you're distracting. But today's, I just wanted to come on here and talk about, so 2021, I really wanted to pick up like a new hobby. Not necessarily new, but like something that, not necessarily new, but something that I had always really enjoyed, which is reading. So I wanted to come on here and kind of give book recommendations for people who might be looking for getting into reading, like really good books that are going to draw you in. Easy reads, quick reads, reads like mystery novels. I love mysteries and thrillers. I recently got into more of like the romance scene, which really wasn't my jam, but kind of got back into that when I started reading Colleen Hoover after I read a book that I'm going to talk about. So I'll go ahead and start with the first book. One of the books that I read last year is Where the Crawdads Sing. This book I really enjoyed because it does have that mystery aspect. But it took a little bit longer to get into. So it was something that the story didn't start off like right off the bat. It didn't really catch my eye, I guess. It was recommended to me by some other people. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a chance. And I really did like it. The ending, phenomenal. But when I was reading the book, it really took me a while. Like it was one of these books, or one of those books, where I would pick it up and read a little bit, put it back down, kind of forget about it, and then pick it back up, read a little bit, put it back down, forget about it. So it wasn't one of the ones that I was constantly reaching for. Like it was definitely a book that I think I actually read another book while I was reading this book. Like it wasn't the only book that I read. So I do recommend it just because it ended really, really good. Probably the last 100 pages was something that it was a book I couldn't put down. But the first initial part of the book I really couldn't get into. So I mean, I got into it enough to finish it, so. All right. Oh my God, I feel like I'm talking so fast. Okay. So, next book. This was a big hype. It has wine on it, LOL. But this was a big hype when it first came out, and I still think it's a phenomenal book. Honestly, it's one of these books that I would go back and read again, just because of how great it was. So, this is Untamed by Glennon Doyle. And basically, it's just a book about her life. And I love the cover too. It's just so girly and like almost like just paint dripping off the book. But it's essentially a book about her life and how she found herself and found like who she was. So she was like living a life that she wasn't in love with, and then one day she woke up and had this realization and made changes, and they were very significant. And I feel like it's a good book. Kind of when I was reading it, I wasn't necessarily like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, but it was also, I had just moved to a new city, I started a new job. It was a book that kind of made me feel like I wasn't out of place, because sometimes you have to feel out of place to figure out what your place is, if that makes sense. So I highly recommend that book to any young person trying to like figure out who they are, because this woman was probably, I think like mid 30s or 40s when she started, definitely 40s, when she, figured all this stuff out about her life and made drastic changes. So that was another really good book. All of these are what really got me in my thriller. Actually, I'm going to talk about a book that I don't have with me currently, but it's called The Woman in the Window. This book was wonderful. So I actually don't think I have the other book with me. I began reading The Girl on the Train, and both of these books essentially have a very similar plot line where it's a woman in a window or a woman on a train, and they basically drink a lot and they think that they see all these things. Whether they do or not, I'm not gonna tell you, but basically it's just a mystery. Like, and they see like people abusing other people or like murders and blah, blah, blah. So that's basically what those two were, and I just love that plot line. Like, I think it was really fun to have like the town drunk who goes around and everyone knows that they drink excessively, and they either ride this train or look out the window and they see all these things. So both of them are different stories, but very similar plot lines. And those books got me into a few of these. This one is called Then She Was Gone. This book is also a thriller, and basically it's about a daughter who disappears. And 10 years after her disappearance, the mother is trying to put her life back together. I'm just reading the back of this, where she unexpectedly meets a charming man in a cafe. Before she knows it, she's meeting Floyd's daughters. His youngest, Poppy, takes Laurel's breath away. And basically with this relationship that the mom had gotten in, she starts finding out all these crazy things that could have happened to her daughter. So that was really interesting. This one, The Downstairs Neighbor, honestly not my favorite, but I did like it. So this is another one of the things, kind of similar to the other two, The Woman in the Window and The Girl on the Train, where something happens to the downstairs neighbor and she's basically like listening in on it and trying to figure out, put the mystery together. So that's a really good one if you end up liking mysteries. And then The Woman in Cabin 10. So this one's really good as well. I believe they're on a boat, if I remember correctly. Honestly, I read this so long ago. Which the back of it is one of the backs where it just gives kind of like quotes and stuff. But basically a lot of the, like one of the quotes says, a psychological thriller that will keep readers spellbound. This intense final chapters just might induce heart palpitations. So this was a really good book. I liked it. One of those where you want to get a glass of wine and kind of just sit down and read. And then Ruth Ware, who wrote The Woman in Cabin 10, also wrote this other book that I have and I read called In a Dark, Dark Wood. These both very similar, like mystery novels. Like just the way she writes them very like similar. They're both very different stories, but both thrillers, and it takes the main character is a woman. So those are really good. After I got on my psychological thriller kick, I was listening to a podcast actually by Tori DeSimone called Manifest. And she started doing like book talks, which I loved. Like I want to do a book club with her. Like she and I read very similar books and I just love that. So one of the books that she talked about and she loved was Verity. This book got me on a huge Colleen Hoover kick where I literally read almost every book that Colleen Hoover's written. So Verity is a very interesting psychological thriller, but it also has like that love interest aspect. So this is kind of what I started going out of like my psychological phase, I'm psycho, going out of that phase of like psychological thrillers into love stories. So this was a hint of both. So I'll read a little bit of the back of it. It says, Lowen Ashley is a struggling writer on the brink of a financial ruin when she accepts a job offer of a lifetime. I really can't read. Jeremy Crawford, husband of best-selling author Verity Crawford, has hired Lowen to complete the remaining books in the successful series his injured wife is unable to finish. And then basically she is an in-home writer, so she stays at the home with them. They're very wealthy people, have 2 children, and she just starts finding out these very like weird things about this family. And then she also finds a autobiography that Verity never intended for anybody to read. And so this book kind of goes back and forth. It's like real life and then the autobiography and then real life and the autobiography. If any of y'all end up reading this, or if anyone watches this video and you've read this or you want to read it, and then I need to discuss, because I feel like I deserve a second book. This book had me mind blown at the end, and I really don't know what to think. I don't know who to believe. I just don't know. I really don't. This is another psychological thriller I really love. I work in a psych hospital. So I work at a behavioral health and drug abuse and addiction hospital, and most of my patients are acute psychiatric treatment, or they're getting acute psychiatric treatment. So they're there for about 7 to 10 days, sometimes longer, it depends. And we essentially just stabilize them. So I do therapy, and they're coming in. Most of the diagnosis I see are schizophrenia, schizoaffective, bipolar disorder, unspecified psych, just a lot of drug-induced psychosis, a lot of those things. And so this was really interesting to me just because it takes place in a psych hospital. with a patient who doesn't speak. And so this was really interesting. It's a really quick read. So the font's small, but the pages, like there's not many pages. So this one's a pretty easy read. I think I got finished with it in like 2.5 days. So that's a really good one. Another Colleen Hoover book that I really liked, I actually bought this one from a friend. She was just selling books on Instagram, and this one was like, she was selling it for like $6. So I was like, hey, I loved the first Colleen Hoover book I read, Verity. I want to read another one. So this one's called Regretting You. This is more love. So that Verity was more psychological with the love interest. This is more a love story. It still has some like mystery to it because I believe there's like, it's going back and forth between the daughter of a family and then other. So the father had ended up like, at the very beginning of the book, something happens to the father, and then they all are trying to piece things together and figure out what was going on. Meanwhile, the daughter has a love interest and blah, blah, blah. So that's really fun. Another book I really liked of Colleen Hoover's, but it was really weird, was Layla. So this book has two people that are love of each other's lives, blah, blah, blah. And then there's an unexpected attack that leaves Layla fighting for her life. So Layla's like the main character. And I'm kind of going off the back again just because it's been so long since I've read these. I remember the gist of it. So they end up like falling in love, and the guy wants to put their relationship back together because this huge attack had left like unknowns. And so they go back to the bread and breakfast where they first met. And there's a lot of weird shit that happens. It honestly kind of confused me when I first read it. I had to like read through a couple things again. It was really good. Like essentially I really liked the majority of this book. I wouldn't say this is not my favorite Colleen Hoover book, but it was pretty good. And I do enjoy most of her stories because a lot of them, she just really knows how to draw someone in, even if it's not the most like entertaining story at all. She's a very good writer. Going back to like Tori D. Simone's podcast, there's a book that she wrote called November 9. And that book I also read. Tori refers to it as something like a high schooler would read. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but Tori also talks about another book that's very similar to November 9 and says that it's more keen to like the adult readers. So I want to go read that. I don't remember what it is. I'd have to go look. But yeah, so I really have enjoyed most of Colleen Hoover's books, but some of them are a little challenging, maybe because she's catering to the teens, so I'm not really sure. Oh, okay. All right, I'm talking about my next book.
Right now?
Yes.
I already think shit.
Dylan. Okay. It ends with us. This I was kind of skeptical about until I saw everybody posting about it. This book was phenomenal. It touches on a lot of domestic abuse and domestic violence, and she did a wonderful job of how someone truly feels when they're going through that, and then how hard it is for people to get out of those situations. Because a lot of times we look at those situations and we're like, oh, just walk away. Not that easy. So that's a really, really good book as well. So after I read all of those, which is honestly a lot. Don't know. After I read all of those, I started getting into, I ended up buying a Kindle on Prime Day at one point in 2021. And okay, I am going to my Goodreads just so I can have the books right here to kind of talk about. A lot of these are series, and so it's not necessarily, I did like each book, but a lot of them are like 4 books in a series or 6 books in a series, and they're all by the same author. She ends up writing like all these different series, and they're all really, really good, but they're all different scenarios as well. And there was a few more along with November 9 that I read with Colleen Hoover's books, and one of them being Ugly Love, another one being Hopeless, another one being Too Late. All of these love stories, some of them have mysteries in them, some of them have more of like that, like violence or drama or, you know, just something going on. So I'm not going to get too much into those just because, as you can tell so far, I love Colleen Hoover, love her work. Some people might not enjoy it as much as I do, but I thought it was wonderful. And then she has like a Slammed series too. Slammed is really good. And eventually I got into Elle Kennedy, who's another author. So I found her by going through Goodreads, and there's a girl that I'm friends with mutually, like through college and stuff. And she and I follow each other on Goodreads, and I see the stuff that she rates. And so she rated a book by Elle Kennedy called The Deal. So I went and read this. And what it is it takes place at a college in more like up north, and it's hockey players. And so basically all these hockey players are players, like boy players. And then they meet some girl at the school and essentially fall in love. But it's very like, what's the word? Not like kinky, like erotic. Like, is that a thing? I read so much. These books they have a lot of sex in them. So I've never been into books like that. I never read any of the 50 Shades of Grey. I've seen the movies and they were like, but these were the first books that I actually ever started reading that have like that aspect in it. So these are all really good. So there's like a series of, it was them in college and then them going, like a few of them, it's like before they went to, or like after they graduated, and then like a group of friends afterwards. Then I got into these like 3 guys, so it's like 3 books, and they all own like this bar, like this nightclub, and so essentially it's the same thing with them. They all have their own different drama in it, which is what really drew me into it. And right now I'm currently reading a series of like this group of assassins, and so they all like go around and like assassinate bad people in the world, but there's like a guy group and a girl group, and each of them like find their lover. So those are really interesting and really good. Really do recommend those. And I haven't finished the last series of like the group of assassins, so I think I'm on like book 4 or 5. There's like 8 books in that series, so that one's a little bit longer. The other ones, there's either like 3 to 4 in each series. So like the hockey players, there's like 3 to 4. Then when they graduate, it comes in like another group, which is like 3 to 4 books. And then that nightclub group is like 3 to 4 books. All of them by Elle Kennedy, all of them very similar styles of writing. But I do recommend, if you like love stories and you like that sexual aspect of a love story, because it does have a lot of that, and it does go into pretty deep detail on some of the books. The hockey books more so, the assassin books have more of like that thriller aspect of fighting and risking your life and doing crazy stuff. So those are my books that I read for 2021, and that doesn't sound like a ton, but I ended up reading a total of like 35 books during 2021, which right now that I have sitting in front of me is 11. So honestly, like, it's a lot of books because I ended up reading all those other series too, and then a couple of those other Colleen Hoover books I read on my Kindle. That's all I really have for you for book talk. If this is something you enjoyed, just let me know. If anyone ends up reading Verity or has read Verity and you come across this video and you want to discuss the ending and you want to fight for another book, let me know, because I will email Colleen Hoover right now. But other than that, thanks for watching, and I hope you come back to my channel.